Okay, so the next thing that you guys are going to be doing is solving systems of equations using linear combinations. Pretty much you're going to be given like a word problem. You're going to have to be able to solve it using the substitution method, which is what you guys just did. So we'll do like one example. The first one is going to be Elliot has a total of 26 books. Okay, he has 12 more fiction books than non-fiction books, and they're telling us that we're going to represent the number of fiction books using the letter X, right? So essentially, when you do a problem like this, you could really just sit there and just try to like think about, all right, let's see, we have fiction books and nonfiction. So like in my head, I'm thinking about like a bookcase, a bunch of books, 26 books, and then you can like use guess and check to determine how many of each he has. I don't know, like 10 and 12 or 9 and 11 or whatever it is that adds up to 26. You could do that. Take a very long time, or you can like try to create an equation and use math to figure it out. So the first thing, essentially the idea of what we're going to be doing is we're going to model, okay, um, scenarios, and the way that we're going to do that is we're going to first identify, okay, so we're going to first identify variables. And so it's more than just like a letter. We have to think about like what is it that the problem is talking about. Then once you have the variables, we'll create expressions, okay, to represent scenario. So now that we have things that we can use to create expressions and stuff like that, then we can finally solve, right? And we're gonna solve for the variables, right? So we'll do each one step by step. So the first thing says like, how do you even set it up? So the first step is how do you determine what the variables are? So when you're reading it, think about like what the scenario is. You always try to imagine what the scenario is. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, just like your basic visual. So Elliot has 26 books. So in my head, I'm immediately thinking of like a bookshelf that has a random books on it. All right, cool. So I see all the books. Now what's in that bookshelf? Well, there's fiction books and there's non-fiction books. Now notice that fiction and non-fiction, they're both types of books. So we're just dealing with one unit, and then that unit, which is books, is then divided up into two different types of books, right? Fiction and nonfiction. So those are the variables that we're going to be talking about because we don't know how many books he has that are fiction or nonfiction. We just know that there's 26 of them. We know that he has way more than the other one, but we don't know exactly how much it is. So that's going to be exactly our variables right there. So we're going to say fiction and nonfiction books. Okay, I'll just write that in the bottom here. Perfect. Okay, then the next step after that is, all right, cool, we have our variables. Let's create let statements now for that. So we're gonna let our fiction books, or in this case, the number of fiction books, right? The number of fiction books, that makes a big difference. And we're going to call it what they want us to call it. Now they told us at the top here they want us to use X, so we're going to use X. X is said let X represent the number of fiction books. So fiction books is X. Then the other variable that we chose, or the other idea here, is non-fiction books. Okay, again, this is the number of. And how do you represent this? Now, you could say y. I know some of you guys think, oh, we can use y. And you know what? You really could use y. Okay, but let's think about this more in detail. When you're creating letters to represent something, you only want to use different letters to associate things that are not in any way related. This is not the case here because these are both types of books. So X will represent the number of fiction books. And we know that he has 12 more fiction books than nonfiction. So he has way more fiction books. All right, that's great. But then how do you represent nonfiction books then? Right, using the fact that he has 12 more fiction ones. This sounds too complicated. So here's how we're going to do this. Okay, I'm actually going to scrap this entire example and we're going to just focus on something else. Let's say that Chattagoon, okay, has 8 more dollars going off the screen here than, I don't know, Jose. Okay, so let's think about this. If I am going to set this to X, All right, and let's think about this more in detail. If I have $8 more than Jose, it's obvious that I have more money than Jose right now because I have 8 more than him. Okay, so from my perspective, this is my X right here. So let's then look at Jose's perspective. Okay, I'll draw Jose right here. Oh, you can't even see that. Okay, we'll make him yellow. Okay, so we're gonna draw Jose. He's looking at me and he's saying, okay, well, if you have $8 more than I do, Chadagoon, then how much do I have in comparison to you? Well, he would have $8 less. Now think about that makes sense, right? If I have $8 more than Jose, then from Jose's perspective, he has $8 less than me. So it's whatever the amount that I have, only we're just gonna subtract 8 from his side. And it's the same idea for the nonfiction books, right? We have 12 more fiction books, and they're telling us, okay, I don't know how much fiction books you have. I know you have more than nonfiction books, and we want you to just call it X. Now, from the from the nonfiction book side, right, we're gonna have 12 less nonfiction books than fiction books, right? Because there's more of the fiction than nonfiction, and these are the variables that are going to represent fiction and nonfiction books. Okay, so now into step 3, and let me just go back really quickly, right? We identified variables, we created expressions. Remember, an expression is something without an equal sign, so these are expressions that represent the scenario. The last thing to do is then to solve. So in step 3 now, it says write out an equation to represent the scenario. So here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to just jump into giving you numbers. I want you to think about this, right? On this bookshelf right here, there are a bunch of books. This is going to be the saddest bookshelf ever. I don't really know what this really is. It just imagines books, right? Books. Okay, so there's a bunch of books on them. All right, how many books are there? Well, it says there's a total of 26. So I'm going to write equals the total, okay, number of books. So on this side of my equal sign, this represents the total number of books. And what are those books made up of? Well, they're made out of fiction and nonfiction. When I add them up, I get the total number of books. That makes sense, right? If I add up the total number of fiction and the total number of nonfiction, I'll get the total number of books on that bookshelf. Okay, so let's see now. What do we know? Well, we know that there's 26 books. Okay, we don't know how much of each, but we do know from the slide before that fiction books was X. So that's exactly what I'm gonna write, X. And what was nonfiction? Remember, it was whatever number of fiction were, but there was 12 less of them. And now we've kind of had an equation here. We kind of just created an equation, right? X plus X minus 12 equals 26. We actually substituted over here. So now we have X plus X minus 12 equals 26. And we can solve this. Now, how would we solve this? Just use it the way we normally do, right? We would combine like terms right there, get all the x's together. So you have 2x minus 12 is equal to 26. Okay, then we want to get this x by itself. So how do we do that? Yep, just add. That's a horrible color. I don't know why I chose that. Okay, add 12 to both sides. 2x equals 2, which is 8, 3. Okay, still need to get this x by itself, so we're going to divide both sides by 2, and we get that x is equal to 19. Okay, now I want you to stop for a second, and I want you to think, what does x equal 19 mean in the context of this problem? What that means is, how does this 19 for x even relate to this problem? And think for a moment, if you're struggling with that, right? Think, what was x? Like, where did we even use that? And I'm gonna go back here, and I want you to look at it, and you'll see it right here in this area, right? What was x? Well, here's x, and it was equal to the number of fiction books. Okay, so if I replace this x, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm actually gonna erase it, right? I'm gonna erase it, and I'm gonna put the number 8, because we just solved for that. I'm sorry, not 8. Whoa. JK. We were going to replace that with, what was it, 19? I have to go back and check now. Is that what it was? Yes, it was. X was 19. Okay, so I'm replacing that x for 19. Same exact thing here, right? X has now been defined. So I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to just take that out. and I'm going to replace that with a 19. Oh, but wait, we could do 19 minus 12. What is that? 19 minus 12 is 7. So what this tells us is that now we have numbers for this. We have 19 fiction books and 12 nonfiction books. Let's see if that actually makes sense, okay? Let's see if that makes sense. In the problem, there was a total of 26. Is it true that 19 plus 7 is equal to 26? I don't know. Pull out your phone, swipe up, use the calculator. 19 plus 7, 26, valid. Okay? Is it true that there are 12 more fiction books? Remember, this is fiction, this is non-fiction. Is it true that there are 12 more fiction than non-fiction? Let's see. 7 is non-fiction, right? If I add 12 to that, that should tell me the number of fiction. Oh, 19. Perfect. So that means that these are the correct numbers. All right, and so this is how you would create an equations, or I should say a system of linear equations, in order to solve, right? First, we want to model it. How do we do that? We identify the variables, we create expressions, okay, that's these guys right here, the x and the x minus 12 that we had, and then finally we'll solve. Nice. So that's going to be it for this piece, and I'll make another video for something else because I can't go on too long.